All right. What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to DubLife Diaries. Ah, this episode's going to hit just a little bit different. All right. No guest, no intro hype, no countdown, no time clock that I'm worried about. It's just me just sitting down, hitting record, talking honestly with you guys about what the hell 2025 really meant for this podcast. Just my first year. And honestly, for me, if you're listening while you're at the gym, like Alan was. He was actually watching on YouTube this morning at the gym and sent me a picture of it. How cool. Thank you for the support. But if you're listening while you're driving, if you're wrenching on something, if you're cleaning out the garage, if you're at work, or if you're just zoning out on your headphones, this one today is to make it feel like you're sitting right here with me. All right. We're sitting right here together. We're chilling. I've been wanting to do a solo episode for a long time, but I didn't really want it to feel forced. I know a lot of podcasters will do their end of the year, podcast and I don't know, some of them just don't feel that natural. I wanted this to feel natural for you guys, and I feel like now it's the end of the year, it feels right. So because 2025 wasn't just I guess a year of just putting out episodes for me, it was about a year of testing. And sometimes that could even mean testing my patience, but proudly. I say that almost as a joke. Don't take it like I'm complaining because I'm not. But testing consistency, testing whether or not what I'm doing with this podcast actually even matters, right? Hoping, by reaching out to a lot of folks. I don't want to get sidetracked, but yes, this is the end of the year review. Let's jump into the stories. Let's jump into the people. Let's jump into the growth. Let's jump into some of the mistakes. And then maybe I'll even take you guys down the path of where we're headed with the podcast in 2026. So let's touch on for a second maybe why the podcast exists, right? Because well, if I'm being honest, it's actually easy to forget why the podcast exists. So check this out. When you're editing episodes weekly, when you're posting clips, like you guys see, I post 2 clips a day from the episodes. When you're chasing uploads, when you're responding to messages, when you're engulfed by the numbers on Podbean and you're looking at your downloads and your watch time on YouTube and all this stuff, honestly, guys, you can lose sight of the original reason that you hit record. So I'm going to reflect on that. DubLife Diaries was never supposed to be just another car podcast, even though leisure automotive. I'm categorized as an automotive podcast. Guys, there's a million shows out there that talk specs, builds, parts list, fucking dyno numbers, horsepower arguments, who's got the bigger one, whatever, all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, that stuff there's a spot for that and it's all cool stuff. In fact, honestly, I love it. I do. It's all great stuff. But for me, that was never the point. Volkswagens for me were just the entry point because what's always fascinated me was the people, the person behind the car, the story behind the why somebody chose VW in the first place. That is what stuck with me over time. Why they stayed when it stopped being cheap, why they stayed when it stopped being easy, when it stopped being trendy, why they didn't quit when the motor blew up, when the build stalled, when they ran out of money, when life got heavy. Because for a lot of people, this isn't just a hobby, is it? Oh man, I've had you guys on the show. For a lot of you, it's an identity. I know people personally that work in the garage and wrench and call it therapy. It's community. And that truly is what I wanted to capture. Now, long form, regardless of what trends say, it actually matters. Let's touch on why. You don't get honesty, true honesty, from a highlight reel, right? You get it when people settle in. Envision this. I teach my technicians this. When you first run a service call and you enter the realm of a customer's house, right? It's like their sets up. It's like they're a fighter, right? And they got their guard up, their sets up, they got their hands up. Your job is to get them to drop their set, right? Get them to take that guarded position and drop it down. Why? Well, so they can be more receiving of the information that you have for them. Well, when a conversation for me, what I call when it settles in, is when you get honesty out of people. They settle in, they're comfortable now sharing with you. That's when the walls come down. When the conversation goes somewhere unexpected because they're comfortable. When the guest forgets there's a mic, forgets it's a show, forgets that it's a production, forgets that it's a podcast, it's when the real stuff shows up. That's been my goal, you guys, because I've been having these conversations for a long time with you guys, just as a fan. But I knew that somebody had to do something about sharing these episodes, sharing these experiences, sharing these stories with people. Talking about 2025 from a numbers perspective, this year, DubLife Diaries put out 46 podcast episodes. That's 46. Not a bad number. I realize 52 weeks in the calendar year. That's a lot, though. That's a lot, 46. I know the number actually doesn't really mean much on its own, but I do want to point something out because it represents something for me I'm proud of, and that's consistency. Because many of you don't know what goes into this. I'm a one man show. So that's scheduling guests, that's coordinating different time zones all over the world, mind you. I've had guests in South Africa, guests in Canada, and parts of it, way, 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 way deep. So coordinating time zones, prepping these conversations. You guys know I'd like to send a podcast outline for my guests so they're prepared with the questions. Doesn't mean we get to all of them, but I like them to be prepared, right? That's recording, that's editing, that's releasing. Now, adding YouTube video. So now there's even more editing. And that happens when life's busy. That happens when motivation dips. That happens when it's easy for me to say, you know what? I'll get to that next week. Quite honestly, some episodes that I've had in 2025, they were planned, 6, 8, 10 weeks out. Some happened last minute. Some were smooth. Some weren't so smooth. And it's okay. I'm not complaining because every single one of you added something to the archive. And that's the part that actually hits for me. This podcast is actually slowly becoming a time capsule of the VW culture. That is freaking wild to me. To think that a few years from now, somebody could stumble across an episode from 2025 and say, wow, that is what was going on in the scene at that time. That's what people cared about. That's what mattered. That's what was changing. That's what the voices were telling us. How cool is that? Now, let's touch on the guests, though, because the guests are actually the only reason why this show worked. And guys, I didn't anticipate that this would happen. I didn't know that I'd be getting the kind of quality that I've got in the community with these guests. I mean, 2025 really just drove this home for my why and why I wanted to start this podcast. But we've had builders. Some builders have been doing this longer than some of our listeners have even been alive. We've had some of the sickest event organizers who built something from nothing. We've had, folks or guests on the podcast who didn't even think their story mattered enough to share. And by the end of the episode, you can not only hear a shift in their confidence, but you can actually see it because I watch these in video format. That's actually how I get my sound as I record all my podcast episodes on Zoom. And then I upload that Zoom video and detract the video and turn it into an MP3, etc. But you can hear the shift, is my point. It's that moment when somebody realizes, oh, wait a minute, this actually means something. This part in the VW culture, this piece, this story, this moment in time, It actually means something. And guys, it's one of my favorite parts, man. Watching somebody connect the dots in real time, it's everything to me. Now, some guests come on, they talk about cars and they end up talking about life and they end up talking about loss and they end up talking about how they had to start over or about community or about events or about struggle, but also about successes. I don't need to go through my episode list. I'm not going to mention every name, but just know this, guys. If you were a guest on DubLife Diaries in 2025, thank you. You trusted me with your story, and I don't take that lightly. All right. I don't take that lightly. I also want to give a shout out to my sponsors and some support that I've received from the community. Honestly, without sponsors, especially the sponsor that I'm going to mention, this show doesn't happen at this level because we're not just talking about random ads and, faceless companies and some type of, online advertising campaign. We're talking about actually people in the culture that believe in the VW culture, people who understand that this podcast is actually about preserving stories, not just selling products. In fact, I don't even sell products yet. I do through Salty Dub, but I don't through the podcast. I thought about it, thought about doing some shirts and stuff, but maybe for the future. But again, not about selling products. So when a sponsor actually supports Dub Life Diaries, I want to make myself crystal clear. You guys are actually just turning around and supporting the community because that's what I'm doing this podcast for, is for you guys. And that matters. That matters big time. So genuinely, thank you to big, big, big supporters. Number one, Volksmania magazine. Here it is on my shirt. Paul Cave and the team. Most of you might not know this. You may have heard me in previous episodes tell this story, but I'll share it with you now. When I decided I was going to start this podcast, I wanted to look into maybe what it would cost me to advertise it. How was I going to get the word out? So I reached out to collectively a lot of the magazines, and Paul Cave from Volksmania is one of the first ones that not only responded, but said, hey, I mean, this is a summarized version of the conversation. Hey, we don't want to sell you advertising. Instead, we want to sponsor you. We want to give you, a piece of the magazine to write about your episodes. And I mean, what an amazing thing to do for somebody in the community that it was just trying to share these stories. So Paul, thank you so much, man. 2025 wouldn't have been the same without you. Next up is dude on my hat, Chris White and the team at Riverbank Customs, Pell City, Alabama. Chris gave me money, and money. I got money for doing this. Like, really? Like, that's really, really, really awesome for somebody to support and show support enough to give monetary value, to give money. Chris, thank you, man. Such a stand-up dude, such a supporter, not just of the podcast, but of everybody in the scene. I see you. You share all the stuff. You're such a great person, man. And to see in the podcast something, anything that made you want to donate, some money, it helped, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So, brother, thank you. I wear this hat proudly. I've worn it through some other episodes, and I will continue to support those that support me. That's what this is all about, you guys. It's about the community supporting each other, vibing. Man, I'm happy to tell you guys the podcast this year, global reach. I know you've seen me share some of the stats, and some of the when I was, in the top 10 on the Apple charts, etc. But the global reach has actually been one of the craziest things to me because I feel like every time I talk about the global reach, meaning how many countries the podcast is downloaded in, I feel like I have to keep changing the number because it keeps growing. So I said to my wife like a month ago, I'm like, how many countries are in the world? And it may be stupid that I have to ask that question, but I did. and we ended up looking it up or something just for accuracy. But guys, 71 countries we are up to. The podcast is global. I just can't really wrap my head around how, but I'm going to tell you each country because I feel like it's important for me to call you guys out. Number one, most of my downloads come out of the US, so thank you, US. United Kingdom, Bangladesh, Netherlands, Ireland, Poland, Canada, Germany, Australia, Singapore, Brazil, Panama, Spain, India, Finland, Venezuela, Switzerland, Mexico, Hong Kong, Belgium, Kenya, Russia, New Zealand, Romania, Puerto Rico, Turkey, France, South Africa, Colombia, Italy, Japan, Philippines, Argentina, Greece, Norway, Egypt, Indonesia, Morocco, Malaysia, Taiwan, the United Arab, Belarus, Chile, the Czech Republic, Georgia. That is so cool, Georgia. I only know about Georgia because of a few fighters in the UFC. Ghana, Jordan, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Sweden, Tunisia, Ukraine, Bulgaria. I didn't even know this was a country. Brunei, Darussalam, Denmark, Ecuador, Guam, Croatia, Hungary, Iraq, Luxembourg, Malta, Mauritius, Nepal, Oman, Peru, Pakistan, Paraguay, Slovakia, Thailand, Trinidad and Tobago, and Vietnam. Gosh, dog. 71 countries, you guys. So I have this podcast software that I use to manage the podcast and put it out on all the podcast platforms called Podbean. Some of you may have seen my account on Podbean when I share some of the episodes. But Podbean has reporting, and I can see where on a not just a geological location on a map, but it also categorizes them of which part of the country the download came from. So I'm guessing they use IP addresses or whatever to do that. But guys, let that land for a second. Different languages, different cultures, different scenes. Hold on. Same obsession with Volkswagens. 71 countries actually tells you something. What's it tell you? VW culture doesn't care where you're from. All it really cares is that you show up. And speaking of showing up, let's talk about the social media. Because again, guys, we're just getting started. I mean, I think the Instagram only has like 400 or 500 followers. Facebook's just at 1,000. I think I've only got maybe 100 and something, 185 or so subscribers on YouTube. So again, just getting started. But listen to some of these stats. Again, using the reporting of the metrics or the data side of the software. TikTok alone this year in 2025, 241,000 views. Instagram, 549,000 views. Facebook, these are collective. These are all the posts that I've had. These are all the views in total. Okay. Facebook, 486,000. So look, I want to touch on this because I'm not trying to talk about ego. What I am trying to talk about is reach. It's amazing. 71 countries and reach. I never in my heart of all hearts thought that something was telling me, and I had this calling to start this podcast. I was almost asking for permission from the community, like, hey, is it going to be accepted? But I knew that I should have just done it, and I did. And I'm glad that I did because I never would have expected what happened this year in 12 short months. All right, let's touch on the hard truths and the lessons. All right, we'll touch on honesty here for a second. Yo, I heard no a lot this year from some people that I just didn't think that no existed. I reached out, I pitched who I was, I followed up, and quite honestly, by a lot of y'all, I got shut down. Now I understand you don't know me, and you don't know that my heart is there. You don't know, maybe if you listen to some of the previous episodes and the guests and see how organized and how prepared I make it, that it might change things, right? It's not just something where you just show up and we just shoot the shit. Um, there's a point that I'm trying to get to, and that point is, being a good host, being a good moderator means I extract these stories from you that everybody can learn from. And it means a lot to me to connect with you guys and get these stories. But I got shut down a lot. And that's the point when I'm just talking about hard truths for a second here. There were weeks that I questioned the format that I do, the rapid fire questions at the end and the intro and all that stuff. There were moments that, made me wonder, looking at downloads and some of the episodes, whether or not long form content really even still mattered. It seems like shorts and stuff are kind of dominating and taking over, but gosh, you can't get to the stories in shorts. You need long form still. There were times where life might have made it tempting to step back, but every single time, and I mean this, somebody reached out, or I got a message, or I looked at a comment, or somebody sent, the podcast a DM and talked about how either this episode or this guest or this person has helped them. Some people have said, man, I needed that. I listened to this or that twice, or I had to rewind this section. And guys, there it is. There's the reminder for me. This isn't about numbers. And see, I was just saying it's easy for us to get wrapped up in the numbers. It's not about the numbers, even though that's what we look for. It is about the impact. That is what I'm searching for. So let's look at the direction. Let's look at the direction for 2026. Let me start here. So my wife and I do a word every year. My word for this year is intentional. So 2026 for me for the podcast is about intention, more depth, more meaning, more conversations that actually deserve the amount of time that you're asking people to spend. Because I'm not trying to chase trends. I'm actually here because I'm chasing truth. So if you're here for that, then you are exactly where you're supposed to be. So if you came on, if you're one of those almost million people, how blessed and how fortunate it is that over a million people that have engaged with the podcast either through social media or downloading. By the way, I don't think I mentioned something. Just real quick, back to the numbers. Those 71 countries have produced 128,000 downloads. So I know that's a small number for some people. It blows my mind because it's a big number for me. So back to you guys. If you listened in 2025, thank you. If you connected and you came along for the journey and you followed along, thank you. If you shared an episode like some of you do, thank you. If you ever felt seen or felt heard through this podcast, that means everything to me. I know some of you have because you let me know, you email me and you tell me. DubLife Diaries isn't just a show, right? This is a living archive. And I feel like if we do a good enough job, this living archive of VW culture, told by the people who live it, will be a valuable source in the future. All right. So again, I want to say thank you to everybody that connected, that listened, that shared, that took any interest. The podcast is still and always will be looking for new guests. Email me if you've been on the show in the past and I've asked you for some referrals and you said that you're going to connect me with some folks. Now's a good time. Email me dublifediaries@gmail.com. Let's talk and let's get in to the community inside of 2026. I'd like to get out west. I'd like to get with the folks with buses by the bridge. I'd like to get out to some of the larger California shows. Yeah, man. Anybody has any connections with any of these folks, please email me and connect me. Nothing cooler than the community hooking the community up. I will see you guys in 2026. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.